Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The castle of Hogwarts had settled into its usual midnight hush. The portraits dozed in their frames, the torches burned low, and the corridors, long and winding as river paths, seemed to hum softly with old magic. Outside, the moon floated above the black lake, casting silver ripples across the water and glinting faintly off the tall windows of the astronomy tower. But inside, in a cozy common room, high in one of the towers, 3 students were very much awake. Albus Potter sat perched on the arm of a sofa, his green eyes alive with mischief. Rose Weasley, quill still tucked behind her ear from unfinished homework, looked torn between excitement and caution, and Scorpius Malfoy, his pale hair gleaming in the firelight, leaned forward, a grin creeping up his face. "Hide and seek," Albus whispered, "in the dark. No wands, no lumos, no teachers." Rose raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like exactly the kind of thing that gets people detention for a month." "Or," Scorpius interrupted, "the kind of thing that makes a night worth remembering." The clock ticked softly. Somewhere below, a door creaked as the castle shifted in its sleep. Albus smirked. "Come on, Rosie. You've read every book in this tower twice. Don't you want to see something new?" That was all it took. A spark of curiosity lit in her eyes, and she nodded, reluctantly at first, then with resolve. "Fine. But if we get caught, I'm blaming both of you." 10 minutes later, the 3 of them were creeping down the spiral stairs, their shoes barely whispering against the stone. The castle was a maze of shadows, the portraits snoring quietly, and the suits of armor standing silent watch. Albus led the way, a flickering lantern in his hand, just bright enough to see by but dim enough not to draw attention. They reached the corridor outside the library. "All right," said Albus, grinning. "Here's how it works. We pick one seeker. The other 2 hide, but we can't leave this floor and no magic allowed." Rose crossed her arms. "And what if Filch catches us?" "Then we run," said Scorpius cheerfully. They drew straws from a torn bit of parchment. Rose got the short one. "Typical," she sighed. "All right, count to 50. And you 2, try not to make it too easy." She turned toward the wall, covered her eyes, and began counting under her breath. 1, 2, 3. Albus and Scorpius darted down opposite directions. The corridor seemed endless, every torchlight stretching and bending in the dark. Albus turned a corner, heart thudding, and ducked behind a tapestry showing a medieval witch stirring a cauldron. He held his breath and listened. Footsteps echoed softly. A door creaked. Somewhere, Scorpius let out a quiet laugh that was quickly swallowed by the silence. Rose's voice floated faintly down the hall, counting still. Then came something unexpected. A whisper. Not Rose's voice, not Scorpius's laughter, but a low, sighing whisper that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Albus froze. "Found you." He peered behind the tapestry. No one. The corridor lay empty, moonlight spilling faintly through a narrow window. The whisper came again, this time from the opposite direction. "Your turn." He swallowed. "Scorpius?" he whispered. "Is that you?" No answer. He slipped out from behind the tapestry. The air colder now, the shadows deeper. The lantern flickered once, then steadied. He followed the sound, each step echoing softly, until he came to a narrow passage he'd never noticed before, half hidden behind a cracked statue of a griffin. It looked old, older than the rest of the castle, the stones damp and covered in moss. "Rose?" he tried. "You can stop counting now. I think we found something." No reply. He glanced back. The corridor behind him was empty, the lantern light casting only his own long shadow. He hesitated, then ducked through the narrow opening. The passage twisted downward, spiraling into darkness. The air grew colder, heavier, and the whisper returned, soft but clear now, like breath against glass. "Play with me?" Albus stopped dead. "Who's there?" A faint silvery glow shimmered at the far end of the passage, growing brighter as he stepped closer. It wasn't torchlight. No, it floated and swirled like mist, moving of its own accord. Then he saw it, a figure taking shape within the glow. A boy, perhaps 14 or 15, dressed in old-fashioned Hogwarts robes that shimmered faintly as though made of moonlight. His eyes were hollow, yet strangely kind, and when he smiled, the corners of his mouth trembled like ripples on water. "You found me," the ghost whispered. Albus stumbled back a step, his heart hammering. Who are you?" The ghost tilted his head. "No one's found me in years. Not since the last game." "The last game?" But before Albus could ask more, footsteps sounded behind him. Rose's hurried voice, Scorpius's echoing call, and the ghost's form wavered, fading into mist. The lantern dimmed, and somewhere far above, a clock struck midnight. The game, it seemed, had only just begun. Rose Weasley hurried down the dim corridor, her footsteps echoing faintly off the stone. "Albus? Scorpius?" she called in a whisper that trembled despite her effort to sound calm. Her heart raced. She'd finished counting, but neither of them had come out of hiding. Usually one of them would have given themselves away by now. Scorpius with a laugh, or Albus with a teasing shout. But the castle was still as a tomb. She gripped her wand for comfort, though the rules forbade its use. "It's just a game," she muttered to herself, "a silly game." But Hogwarts had a way of making games feel different after midnight. The air itself seemed charged, every shadow a secret, every draft a whisper of something old. She turned a corner and stopped short. A faint trail of light glimmered on the floor, like silver dust, twisting away into darkness. "Albus?" She tried again, her voice smaller now. No answer. She followed the glow cautiously, her hand brushing the cold wall. The corridor narrowed, leading to a statue she didn't remember ever seeing before. A griffin with one cracked wing, its eyes half shut, as though drowsing, and behind it, a gap in the wall, barely wide enough for a person to slip through. "Honestly," Rose sighed under her breath, "if you two found a secret passage and left me behind." She ducked into the gap. The air grew colder at once, thick with damp and age. The stones were slick, and faint wisps of mist curled along the floor. She could hear the distant drip of water somewhere below. The faint trail of silver light continued ahead, swirling like moonlight caught in a current. Then she heard voices. One was Albus's, quiet, wary, the other softer, like wind whispering through a flute. "Who are you?" Albus asked. No reply, only that same breathy tone. Rose crept forward, her pulse pounding. The passage opened suddenly into a small chamber. Albus stood there, frozen in place, lantern in hand. Before him hovered a boy of ghostly silver, translucent and pale, His hair drifted around his face as though underwater. When Rose stepped in, the ghost turned, his eyes colorless and endless, fixed on her. "Another player," he said softly. Rose felt her throat tighten. You're a ghost." "Yes," he said, his smile strange and faint, "but not one you've met before." Albus turned to her, his voice low. "He says there was another game, years ago." The ghost's gaze drifted upward as though listening to distant music. "They played, and they lost. The castle kept their secret well." A sound came from the tunnel behind them, quick footsteps, and then Scorpius stumbled in, breathless. "Merlin's beard, it's freezing down there." Oh. He stopped dead at the sight of the ghost. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The ghost regarded them each in turn, eyes shining faintly. "You came to play," he said, "so we'll play." "We didn't mean," Rose began, but he lifted a hand. The walls shivered, the lantern flickered. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the passage behind them sealed shut. Rose ran to it, pressing her hands against the smooth stone where the entrance had been. "No," she whispered, "it was right here." The ghost watched her with quiet amusement. "The castle likes to keep things interesting." Scorpius squared his shoulders. "All right, ghost or not, this isn't funny. Let us out. You will be free when the game is done." Albus turned slowly toward him. "What kind of game?" The ghost smiled again, a wistful, almost childlike smile. "Hide and seek. You hide and I'll find you. But beware, if the castle hides you instead, I cannot help you." The temperature dropped another degree. Frost crept along the stones. Rose grabbed Albus's arm. "This isn't normal. We should call Professor Longbottom or—" "How?" Scorpius cut in. "There's no door, no flue, and magic's acting strange. Try a spell if you like." She hesitated, then drew her wand. "Lumos." The tip flared mighty, then sputtered and died. A faint hiss filled the air. The ghost tilted his head. "No spells in this game, only courage." He floated backward, his form thinning into mist, and his voice echoed faintly. "I'll count to 50. The chamber dimmed to near blackness. Rose turned to the boys, panic threatening to rise. "What do we do?" Albus forced himself to think. "We play, for now." Scorpius managed a weak grin. "Right? Easy enough, just hide from a spirit who can walk through walls." They split up. Albus darted into a side passage that branched from the main chamber, following the curve of the wall until he found a small alcove behind a fallen pillar. The cold bit into his hands as he crouched low. His breath formed pale mist in the air. Somewhere deeper in the tunnels, Rose and Scorpius found their own corners to hide in. The silence that followed was thick, the kind that pressed against the ears. Then came the whisper. 1, 2, 3. The ghost's voice counted slowly, each number stretching through the tunnels like a thread of fog. 4, 5, 6. The stones pulsed faintly with light, as though reacting to his presence. 10, 11, 12. And with every count, the castle itself seemed to shift. Corridors bent where they shouldn't, stairs led nowhere, and doors that had been open moments before sealed tight. 20. Albus pressed his back against the cold stone, listening to the faint sound of breathing. Or was it wind? The air stirred around him. 30. A whisper brushed his ear. "Found you." He spun around. He's no one there. Only the fading trace of frost on the wall. 40. Somewhere far off, a soft cry echoed. Rose's voice. Albus bolted upright, sprinting down the twisting passage. The walls blurred, the turns seemed to double back, but he ran on. He found Rose standing near a stone archway, pale as the frost itself. "He was here," she whispered, "right beside me." Scorpius appeared from the opposite direction, panting. "The corridors, they're changing. I tried to go back to the main chamber, but it's gone." Before any of them could speak again, the ghost's voice filled the air, clear and cold as winter. "Time's up." A gust of icy wind swept through the passage, snuffing out their lantern. In the darkness that followed, 3 faint words echoed from nowhere, or everywhere. "Ready or not? Here I come." And in that instant, Hogwarts, their safe, familiar home, no longer felt like a castle at all, but a living maze with a heartbeat of its own. The game of hide-and-seek had begun in earnest. The wind howled through the ancient passage like a living thing. Albus could feel it against his face. Cold, sharp, whispering words he could not quite hear. His lantern had gone dark, yet faint blue light now pulsed along the walls, as if the stones themselves remembered the ghost's touch. He reached for Rose's hand. She clutched his, tightly trembling, though her eyes were fierce. Scorpius stood beside them, his pale hair glimmering faintly in the strange light. "Keep together," Albus said, his voice steady despite the chill that bit through his words. "No more splitting up." "Agreed," Scorpius muttered. "I think I prefer detentions to hauntings." A faint laugh echoed from nowhere. Soft, amused. The brave ones always say that at first. They turned toward the sound, but it came from every direction at once. The ghost's voice filled the passage, drifting like mist. "You hide, I seek, but the castle loves a clever player. Let's see who it chooses." And then the walls began to move. The stone groaned, grinding against itself. The floor shuddered, tilting slightly. Cracks of blue light ran like veins along the ground. The passage they stood in stretched and split into 2 curving tunnels, each beckoning them deeper. Rose pulled her wand instinctively. "No magic," he said, she whispered. "But maybe we can test the walls." She brushed her fingers against the glowing stones. They were solid, cold, and seemed to hum faintly beneath her touch. Scorpius frowned. "We'll lose our way if we choose wrong." Albus looked between the 2 tunnels. One glowed faintly brighter, the air warmer, filled with the faint scent of burning candles. The other was darker, the light dimming to nothing but the whisper. That strange, lilting whisper seemed to come from within it. He hesitated. "He's trying to lead us somewhere." "Or away from somewhere," Rose replied. Scorpius took a step toward the darker tunnel. Only one way to find out. They followed him, each step echoing sharply. The tunnel narrowed until they had to walk single file, the air heavy with the scent of damp stone and something older. Dust and candle wax and a faint metallic tang. Then, without warning, the ground gave way beneath them. Rose screamed as they fell into darkness, tumbling through cold air until they landed with a thud on a hard floor below. Albus groaned, pushing himself up. His lantern clattered beside him and flickered back to life with a weak, golden glow. They were in another chamber, vast and round, lined with tall, arched mirrors that stretched up to a domed ceiling. Dust drifted through the air like silver snow. Scorpius picked himself up, rubbing his elbow. "I'm fine, by the way," he muttered, in case anyone was wondering. "Where are we?" Rose whispered. She stepped closer to one of the mirrors. It was cracked down the center, its surface fogged with age, but as she drew nearer, the mist cleared. revealing not her reflection but the image of an empty corridor, one she didn't recognize. "Look at this," she breathed. Each mirror showed a different place. The great hall in shadow, the library shrouded in fog, the moving staircases frozen in eerie stillness, and in every reflection there was the faint silhouette of a boy, pale, half-seen, drifting just out of reach. Albus swallowed. "He's watching us." As if in answer, the ghost's voice murmured again, close now. "You're clever, but clever doesn't win the game." A figure appeared in the mirror before them, the ghost boy, clearer than before. His eyes glowed faintly, not cruel, but sorrowful. "Why are you doing this?" Rose demanded. "What do you want?" The boy tilted his head. "I was left behind, forgotten. The castle remembers me only when the game begins." Albus stepped forward, his voice softer. "What's your name?" The ghost's lips moved, but no sound came. He looked almost startled, as though the question itself hurt him. Then, with a faint, trembling smile, he whispered, "You wouldn't remember it." The mirrors flickered, the reflections shifted. Now the images showed the three of them, standing in the chamber, but in each mirror something was wrong. In one, Rose stood alone. In another, Albus's lantern lay shattered. In another still, Scorpius's reflection looked back. With eyes of solid white, a deep rumbling filled the air. The mirrors began to tremble, their surfaces rippling like water. "Run," Albus said. They turned and fled just as the first mirror shattered, spraying shards of light and sound. The floor beneath them quaked, and a hidden doorway yawned open in the far wall. They dove through it, landing in yet another corridor, this one lit by floating candles that burned with blue fire. They stumbled to a stop, gasping. The door behind them sealed shut. "Every room's a trap," Scorpius said through clenched teeth. "He's hurting us." Rose nodded grimly. "Toward what, though?" Albus scanned the corridor ahead. "Maybe toward the end of his game." The blue candles flickered, and letters began to form on the wall in glowing light. "The seeker always finds. The hiders always stay." Rose's breath caught. "He's not playing to win. He's playing to keep us here." Albus clenched his fists. "Then we end the game before he can." Scorpius gave a nervous laugh. "Right. End a ghost's magic in the middle of an enchanted castle. Simple enough." But Rose wasn't listening. She had spotted something at the far end of the corridor, a door marked with the faint outline of a crest. Not the modern Hogwarts crest, but an older one carved in deep relief. A lion, a serpent, a badger, and a raven circling a single star. "This isn't a student passage," she whispered. "It's part of the original foundation, from before the founders built the newer halls." The words seemed to stir the air. A faint hum vibrated through the stones. Behind them, a faint voice murmured, almost like a lullaby, "Run if you can." But the castle loves to play. The candles went out. Darkness swept in like a tide. Albus grabbed Rose and Scorpius by the arms. "That door," he said sharply. "Now!" They ran, the corridor stretching and warping as they moved, the darkness curling at their heels like smoke. The crest gleamed faintly in the dark, and as they reached it, Albus threw his shoulder against the door. It burst open with a thunderous echo. They stumbled through, slamming it shut behind them. The noise stopped. No whispers, no shifting walls, just silence. The chamber they had entered was vast and circular, lit by a single shaft of moonlight from high above. Dust swirled in the air like tiny silver motes. In the center stood an ancient stone table, cracked and covered in faint runes. Rose traced the markings with her fingers. These are old, older than the castle itself. I think it's a binding charm. Binding what? Scorpius asked. Before she could answer, a voice spoke from behind them. Calm, sorrowful, and very close. Binding me. They turned. The ghost stood at the edge of the moonlight, his eyes no longer hollow but filled with quiet pain. You shouldn't have come this far, he whispered. Now the castle knows your names. And as his shadow stretched across the floor, the runes began to glow. Not blue this time, but deep crimson, pulsing like the beat of a heart. The game, it seemed, was about to change. For a moment, none of them moved. The chamber felt alive. The ancient runes beneath their feet thrummed like a heartbeat, and the air seemed to thicken with a pulse of unseen magic. The ghost stood before them half in shadow, his faint form wavering in the shaft of moonlight that fell from the ceiling high above. Rose drew a sharp breath. The runes, they're reacting to him. The ghost nodded slowly. They always do. The founders made this place to hold me, but even they could not stop a spirit who refused to sleep. Albus took a step forward, his voice low but steady. You said we shouldn't have come this far, then why lead us here? A faint smile touched the ghost's lips. Because part of me wants the game to end. Scorpius frowned. You mean you want to be released? Perhaps. The boy's voice drifted like mist. Or perhaps I've played too long to remember what release means. The runes brightened. Rose knelt beside the nearest one, brushing dust from its lines. The script glowed faintly golden beneath her fingers. It's a sealing circle, she murmured, but the energy, it's incomplete. Because the magic keeping him here is still active, Albus said. We'd have to finish the spell that bound him, or break it entirely. Scorpius swallowed. And how exactly do we do either without blowing up half the castle? The ghost watched them in silence. His expression softened, almost wistful. You remind me of them, he said finally. The last ones who played, they wanted to help too. Rose looked up sharply. What happened to them? His eyes darkened. They lost. The temperature dropped, the air thickening with frost. The walls began to shift again, faint ripples of movement running along the stone. The runes pulsed faster, their glow deepening to blood red. Albus raised his voice above the rising hum. If the founders trapped you, there must be a reason. What did you do? The ghost hesitated. When he spoke, his voice trembled like the surface of a pond. I tried to make Hogwarts remember me. The words made little sense, but Rose's face paled as realization dawned. You were a student? The ghost nodded. Long ago. My name was Elias Grimm. I came here the year after the founders vanished. The castle was already ancient then, full of secrets no one had yet uncovered. I thought I could find them. His faint smile turned bitter. I did, but the castle didn't want to be found. His eyes glimmered faintly as he stepped closer. I played hide and seek with it, alone. The walls moved, the doors whispered, and before I knew it, I was lost. When the professors found my wand weeks later, it was lying where I began the game. He raised his hand, translucent, shimmering, and pressed it over his heart. My body never left this room. Rose stared at the runes circling the floor. So the castle trapped you here. The founders did, Elias corrected. To keep the castle's magic from growing wild, it had started playing on its own, opening doors that didn't exist, swallowing rooms. I was its first and last companion. Scorpius exhaled shakily. And now you're... What, a part of it? I am its echo, Elias said softly. Every time a game begins, the castle remembers me. It wakes me, and it waits for players who will never win. The runes flared brighter, the hum rising to a low, steady throb. Rose stood, determination lighting her eyes. Then we'll do what the founders couldn't. We'll free you. Elias regarded her sadly. You can't. You don't understand what keeps me bound. Try us, Alba said. The ghost hesitated, his form flickering as though caught between two worlds. The spell that holds me, he said at last, is woven into the castle's foundations. Break it and Hogwarts will forget its shape. Rooms will vanish, staircases will fall. The walls themselves will forget how to stand. Rose's hand fell to her side. So freeing you would destroy the school. Elias's faint smile returned. Exactly. The silence that followed was heavy. Even the hum of the runes seemed to dim. Albus's brow furrowed. Then what happens if we don't free you? Then the castle keeps me, Elias said. And now it will keep you too. The runes surged again, their glow brightening until it hurt to look at. The ground trembled. Scorpius cursed under his breath. That sounds like our cue to move. They ran, or tried to. The walls rippled, closing in, and the moonlight vanished as if snuffed out. The air turned icy and black. Rose's voice cut through the darkness. We have to break the connection, disrupt the runes somehow. Albus drew his wand without thinking, shouting, Reducto! The spell struck the nearest rune, sending sparks flying, but instead of shattering, the symbol flared white-hot. A shock wave of energy hurled them backward. The ghost's voice echoed all around them, distorted, pained. Stop! You don't know what you're doing. Rose pushed herself to her knees, coughing. If we can't destroy them, maybe we can rewrite them. She pointed her wand, muttering quickly, lines of ancient incantation she'd memorized from her arithmancy texts. Light spilled from the tip of her wand, weaving over the rune like threads of gold. For a moment the symbols flickered uncertainly, then shifted, the edges bending, the pulse slowing. Elias gasped, his form flickering violently. You're unbinding me. Good, Albus shouted over the roar of energy. Maybe then you'll stop trying to trap us. The ghost's expression was one of anguish. You don't understand. If you break it now, the castle will... The rest was lost in the thunderous crack of magic. A blast of red and gold light filled the chamber, and the world seemed to twist sideways. The floor fell away. When Albus opened his eyes again, he was lying on cold stone. The hum was gone. The moonlight returned, faint and thin, slanting through a high window. The runes had faded completely, leaving only faint scorch marks on the floor. Rose sat nearby, pale but conscious. Scorpius groaned beside her. Everyone alive? Albus asked, his throat raw. Barely, Scorpius muttered. But I think I preferred the game before the exploding floor. Rose's gaze darted around the chamber. Where's Elias? The answer came as a faint whisper. Here. He stood by the far wall, his form dimmer than before, almost transparent. His expression was unreadable. You did it, he said softly. The bond is broken. Rose took a hesitant step forward. Then you're free? The ghost shook his head. No, the castle keeps what it loves. Before they could speak, the walls shuddered. Cracks split the ceiling. Dust rained down. The air shimmered with unstable magic. The foundations, Rose whispered. It's unraveling. Elias turned toward them, his eyes full of something like sorrow and gratitude. Go. The castle will remember you now. It won't let you die here. What about you? Albus shouted over the rising rumble. Elias smiled faintly. Perhaps now I can finally hide where no one will ever find me. The floor beneath them split open, light pouring through the cracks. The world dissolved into brilliance, and then silence. When the light faded, the three students were lying on the floor of the library. Morning sunlight streamed through the high windows. Books lay scattered across the floor. No trace of the secret chambers remained. Rose sat up slowly, dazed. It was real, Albus said quietly. He looked toward the far shelf. For an instant, he thought he saw a boy's reflection in the glass, pale, smiling faintly. Then it was gone. The whisper that followed was soft as wind through leaves. Game over. The next morning dawned pale and misty, the kind of dawn that made Hogwarts appear carved from cloud and memory. The castle's turrets rose into a thin fog, and the black lake lay still as glass. Students filled the great hall with sleepy chatter, but at the Gryffindor table 3 faces were unusually quiet. Albus Potter, Rose Weasley, and Scorpius Malfoy sat close together, their eyes red from a sleepless night. The memories of the ghost, the collapsing chamber, and that final whisper still clung to them, like a dream half remembered. Scorpius stabbed at his toast, muttering, "You'd think if we nearly broke the foundations of Hogwarts, there'd be some sign. A crack in a wall, a loose floorboard, something." Rose shook her head. "The castle fixes itself, always has. It's alive. We just saw that for ourselves." Albus said nothing. He was staring toward the ceiling where the enchanted sky showed a wash of soft morning light. Everything looked normal, ordinary. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the silence of the castle was deeper than before, as though Hogwarts were holding its breath. When lessons began, the 3 of them dragged themselves through the motions. Professor McGonagall, now headmistress once again, gave her morning announcements with the same sharp precision as always. Nothing about hidden passages, nothing about ancient ghosts. But when Albus passed through the corridor by the library, he felt it. That strange chill again, brushing his neck like cold breath. He stopped. The corridor looked ordinary, but the wall where the griffin statue had stood seemed newer, smoother, as though recently repaired. "Rose," he said later that day, catching her between classes, "come with me. There's something you need to see." Scorpius followed without protest. He'd already learned that when Albus had that particular look, the mixture of curiosity and stubbornness he'd inherited from both sides of his family, there was no point arguing. They reached the corridor in silence. Albus pointed at the wall. This was where it started. Rose frowned, pressing her hand against the smooth stone. It sealed completely. No seams, no hidden latch, nothing. Scorpius leaned closer. "You're sure this is the right place?" Albus nodded. "I remember that griffin statue. It covered the entrance." Rose took a step back, brow furrowed. "The castle's hiding it again." Before they could speak further, a faint sound reached their ears. The soft flutter of parchment. Rose turned. A piece of paper lay on the floor a few feet away, though none of them had seen it fall. She bent to pick it up. It was old, yellowed, the ink faded but legible. At the top, in looping handwriting, was a name: Elias Grimm, 4th year. Beneath it, a list of marks and a small note written in the same delicate hand: withdrawn from studies, presumed missing. Scorpius let out a slow breath. "So he was real?" Albus stared at the parchment. "He said he played the first game, that the castle remembered him." Rose turned the paper over.
On the back, faint pencil lines formed a map, a rough sketch of Hogwarts' lower floors, with a small circle drawn beneath the library, and beside it a single phrase in slanted handwriting. "If I cannot leave, I will wait where they began." They exchanged looks. "The library," Albus said quietly. Rose hesitated. "We swore we wouldn't go back down there." Scorpius gave a weak grin. "We've said that before." Night fell quickly that evening. By the time they reached the library, most students were already in their dormitories. Madame Pince had long since retired. The lamps dimmed to soft pools of gold. The air smelled of parchment, dust, and candle wax. They crept between the tall shelves, moving toward the back where the restricted section loomed behind iron gates. Rose took out the parchment again, comparing the map to their surroundings. "Here," she whispered, pointing toward a narrow gap between two towering bookcases. The gap was barely wide enough to slip through. On the floor lay a single cracked tile marked faintly with a rune. The same kind of marking they had seen in the hidden chamber. Albus crouched, brushing away the dust. "It's the same magic." As his fingers touched the rune, the air shivered. The faint sound of laughter drifted through the shelves, distant, echoing like a memory replaying itself. Rose drew in a breath. "Elias?" No answer. Only the faint flicker of movement in the shadows, a pale shimmer darting between the shelves. "Did you see that?" Scorpius whispered. "Yes," Albus murmured. "Stay close." They followed the light deeper into the stacks. The rows grew narrower, darker. Books towered high above, their titles long faded. Somewhere far behind them, a clock chimed midnight. The shimmer of light paused ahead, hovering by a ladder that reached toward the highest shelf. And there, half buried among the books, was something strange. A box, small and wooden, carved with the same crest they had seen on the chamber door, the four creatures of Hogwarts circling a star. Rose climbed the ladder, her heart pounding. She reached the box and gently pulled it free. The dust stirred around her, and for a moment she swore she saw a faint figure reflected in the polished wood. A boy's face watching her. She climbed down and set the box on the floor. "It's locked." "Then let's open it," Scorpius said. But before they could, the air changed. A cold wind swept through the library, snuffing out the nearest candles. The pale shimmer flared into brightness, and a familiar voice whispered, low and urgent, "Don't." Elias stood before them, his form flickering like the light of a dying star. He looked weaker, dimmer than before, yet his eyes burned with a strange intensity. "You broke the seal," he said softly. "The castle is awake again." Rose's voice trembled. "We just want to help you." "You can't," Elias said. "The game ended when you freed me, but the castle doesn't understand endings. It only remembers beginnings." Albus took a step closer. "What happens if we open the box?" Elias hesitated. "You'll find what I hid from it. But once you look, it will know you've seen." Rose glanced at Albus. "We've come this far." Albus nodded. "We open it." Scorpius sighed. "Why do I always regret those words?" Rose raised her wand. "Alohomora." The lock clicked open. Inside lay a single silver coin tarnished with age. Around its edge, engraved in delicate script, were 4 words. "The castle remembers all." As Rose lifted it, the walls groaned, the shelves shook, books fell like rain. Elias's voice rose above the noise, desperate. "It's seen you! Run!"
But even as they turned, the world shifted. The floor melted into fog, the shelves dissolving into ghostly outlines. They were no longer in the library, but standing once more in the vast, round chamber of mirrors. Only now, the mirrors showed no reflections. Each one gleamed with a different image. Scenes of Hogwarts through time. The founders, the building of the castle, the laughter of long-gone students, and in every mirror a small boy stood watching. Elias. He looked at them with eyes full of both fear and hope. He wants to play again. Rose clutched the coin to her chest. Then we'll finish it this time. Elias nodded, his form beginning to fade. Be careful. The castle never forgets those who seek it. And as he vanished, the mirrors rippled. One by one, they shattered, and the echo of their breaking filled the air like the beginning of a new game. Shards of mirror light swirled around them, glittering like ice in a winter storm. The library was gone. Only the round chamber remained, its walls glowing faintly as though alive. Each fragment that floated through the air reflected something different. Corridors shifting, staircases twisting, faces flickering like memories. Hogwarts itself seemed to breathe, and every exhale carried the whisper of Elias Grimm. The castle remembers all, Rose whispered, clutching the silver coin. The engraving shimmered faintly in her palm, throwing ripples of pale light across the chamber. Albus's voice was low and steady. This is what he meant. The castle's memory. It's showing us everything it's ever seen. Scorpius looked around warily. That's all well and good. But how about we don't live through its greatest hits? I'd rather not end up as one of those memories. A faint rumble shook the floor. The shards of glass began to drift toward one another, forming a circle of floating mirrors around the trio.
They were no longer reflections of the past, they were windows, each opening to a different part of the castle. Rose pointed. Look, that's the Great Hall. And there's the clock tower. And wait. Her eyes narrowed. One mirror showed the library, but not as it was now. The lamps were brighter, the shelves older, the air filled with the laughter of students dressed in robes from centuries past. That's Hogwarts from Elias's time, Albus murmured. The ghost's voice answered from nowhere and everywhere. You see it now. What I saw. The castle remembers, but it cannot tell the difference between now and then. Elias, Rose called. Where are you? The mirrors shivered. For a heartbeat, the boy's pale face appeared in one of them. You freed me from the runes, but you freed the castle's mind with me. Now it wants to keep its memories close. You have to make it forget. Scorpius stared at the coin in Rose's hand. How do you make a castle forget? Elias's form flickered by letting go of what it holds dearest. Its heart. Albus frowned. Its heart? The founders bound it beneath the school, Elias said softly. A room made of stone older than magic itself. They called it the Vault of Memory. The chamber trembled again, and the circle of mirrors began to spin. The images within them grew brighter, flickering faster until the whole room pulsed with motion. One mirror cracked open like a doorway, light spilling from it in long, twisting threads. That's the way, Elias whispered. Rose's gaze met Albus's. If we don't do this, Hogwarts might never be safe again. Albus nodded once. Then we finish it. They stepped through the mirror. For an instant, the world folded around them, light and shadow twisting until up and down no longer existed. Then their feet struck solid ground, and they found themselves in a narrow stone corridor. The air smelled of damp earth and ancient dust.
Torches flickered along the walls, though none of them had been lit.
Scorpius rubbed his arms. I'm going to have nightmares about tunnels for the rest of my life. Rose ignored him, studying the floor. These markings, look, they're guiding us. The faint symbols glowed beneath the dust, forming a path that wound deeper underground. They followed it in silence. The deeper they went, the stronger the hum became. A low, steady vibration that resonated in their bones. The castle above felt distant, as though they had stepped outside time itself. Finally, the passage opened into a vast hall. Pillars of black stone rose high into the shadows, and in the center stood an immense circular dais. Upon it rested a single object, a mirror unlike any they had seen before. It was taller than a man, framed in silver, its surface rippling like liquid moonlight. The heart of the castle, Albus breathed. Rose stepped closer, her reflection shifting strangely. She reached out, but Elias's voice stopped her. Be careful. The vault holds every memory the castle has ever known. If you touch it, it will show you everything, and it will never let you go. Albus turned toward the voice. The ghost stood beside one of the pillars, faint but visible, his expression weary. You brought me here once before, Elias said quietly. I thought I could make it remember me. Instead, it made me part of itself. Rose held up the coin. Then this coin is the key, isn't it? Elias nodded. The founders created it to lock the vault. But when I found it, I couldn't resist looking inside. The moment I did, the castle knew me. It loved me, and it would not let me leave. Scorpius stared at the mirror uneasily, and now it's awake again because we opened that box. Yes, Elias said, it wants to know you now. The surface of the mirror rippled, images swirled within it, not reflections, but visions. The great hall, the lake, the common rooms, even the castle grounds under starlight. Voices whispered from within, hundreds of them overlapping. Rose clenched her jaw. We have to finish what you started. We have to seal it again. Elias's gaze softened. If you do, I'll vanish forever. Albus stepped closer. You've been trapped long enough. For a moment, the ghost's expression flickered between relief and sorrow. Then I'll help you. He raised his hand, and a circle of light formed around the dais. Place the coin here, he said. But once it's done, you must leave at once. The vault will fight to stay open. Rose moved forward, the coin gleaming faintly in her grasp. The air grew thick, humming with raw power. As she reached the dais, the ground beneath them quivered. The mirror's surface bulged outward like a living thing. A voice emerged from it, low, ancient, and terrible. Do not take what is mine. The torches flared blue, the floor cracked. From the shadows around the dais, shapes began to form, silhouettes made of shimmering light, the echoes of students and teachers long gone. Their faces were blank, but their movements were familiar, walking through halls, laughing, casting spells, the living memories of Hogwarts itself. Rose's heart pounded. It's using them to stop us. Albus raised his wand. Then we go through them. The echoes moved toward them, silent, ghost-like, but heavy as mist when they struck. Albus and Scorpius fought to clear a path, while Rose reached the mirror. The coin in her hand burned hot, filling the air with a blinding silver glow. Elias's voice rang out above the chaos. Now, say the words. Rose's voice trembled as she spoke, the old language heavy on her tongue. Memoria Claude, Aeternum Dormi. The light from the coin shot into the mirror. The surface screamed.
a sound not made for human ears, and the images within it began to collapse, folding into one another like falling stars. The vault shuddered. The pillars cracked. "Go!" Elias cried, "before it takes you too." Albus grabbed Rose's hand, pulling her back as Scorpius stumbled toward them. The tunnel behind them blazed with light. They ran, the roar of collapsing stone chasing them through the darkness. As they reached the end of the corridor, Albus looked back one last time. Elias stood before the mirror, his form glowing brighter and brighter. He smiled, calm, peaceful, and then the light swallowed him whole. A final whisper followed them as the vault sealed shut. "Thank you." The next moment they burst through an archway and into the entrance hall. The castle was silent. The torches burned their normal golden light. The air was warm again. Scorpius bent double, gasping. "Tell me that's the end?" Rose looked down at her hand. The coin was gone. Albus turned toward the grand staircase. "It feels different." She nodded, because the castle finally let him go. From far above, the faint sound of bells echoed, the first light of dawn creeping through the windows. The three of them stood in silence, side by side, as the new day broke over Hogwarts. And though none of them would ever speak of that night again, sometimes, when the corridors grew cold and the walls whispered softly in their sleep, Albus thought he could still hear Elias's voice, faint and far away, not calling for help this time, but laughing, somewhere beyond the reach of the castle's endless memory. Spring unfurled across the castle grounds, yet the memory of that night lingered in the air. A hush in the stairwells, a shadow too long in the corners, the faintest whisper of cold whenever the corridors grew quiet. Hogwarts breathed again, but differently, as though it too remembered what had been sealed beneath its stones. Albus Potter tried to return to the rhythm of ordinary days. Classes, Quidditch practice, homework, life carried on. Yet sometimes, when he passed a certain corridor or heard the echo of laughter from an empty room, he caught himself listening, expecting a voice that no longer came. Rose had buried herself in her books, though her usual brisk certainty had softened into something quieter. She had taken to visiting the library late at night, tracing her fingers along the spines of forgotten tomes, searching for any mention of the vault or of Elias Grimm. And Scorpius, though he made jokes as easily as ever, had begun keeping a small journal, its pages filled with scribbled notes, not about ghosts or curses, but about memory. "Just in case," he'd said once when Albus asked. "So someone remembers the truth, if the castle ever decides to forget again." It was a week after the sealing of the vault when it happened. The three of them were in Professor Longbottom's herbology class, surrounded by rows of fluttering snargaluffs. The greenhouse smelled of damp earth and mint, sunlight spilling through the glass roof. Rose was halfway through pruning when she froze, her eyes fixed on a patch of soil near her plant. "Did you see that?" Albus looked up. "See what?" "There," she pointed. A faint shimmer had rippled through the soil like heat haze, then vanished. Professor Longbottom wandered over, wiping his hands. "Everything all right, Miss Weasley?" Rose hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Yes, sir. Just thought I saw something." Longbottom peered at the snargaluff. "Well, if you did, it's likely one of its tendrils twitching. They're sensitive this time of year." He gave her a kind smile. "Good work, all three of you. You've been unusually quiet lately. Perhaps that's a good sign. When class ended, they walked back toward the castle in silence. Only when they reached the bridge overlooking the lake did Scorpius speak. "That shimmer. You saw it too, didn't you?" Rose nodded. It wasn't a plant. The soil pulsed like magic. Albus frowned. The vault was sealed. Whatever that was, it shouldn't still be here. A chill wind swept across the bridge. Beneath them, the black lake rippled with the motion of something deep below. "Maybe sealing the vault didn't end the magic," Scorpius said quietly. "Maybe it just spread." That night, none of them could sleep. Albus tossed restlessly in his bed, staring at the canopy above him. The dormitory was silent save for the slow breathing of his roommates. But somewhere beyond the tower walls, he heard it. Faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat buried deep in stone. He slipped out of bed, dressed quietly, and crept through the common room. The fire had burned down to embers, shadows dancing along the walls. He descended the stairs and crossed the empty corridors, guided only by instinct. Or perhaps something older. The sound grew clearer the lower he went. Down past the great hall, through a side passage he barely remembered, until he reached the stretch of wall that had once hidden the griffin statue. It was still sealed, smooth and featureless, yet the air hummed softly around it, and the faintest trace of silver light leaked from between the stones. Albus reached out. His fingertips brushed the wall, and the light flared. The stone rippled, and for an instant he saw a reflection that wasn't his own, a boy, pale and smiling faintly, standing behind him. "Elias," Albus whispered. The ghost's voice was soft, distant, but unmistakable. "You sealed the vault. The castle dreams again." "I thought you were gone." "I am," Elias said, his form flickering like candle flame. "But dreams leave echoes, and some echoes are stubborn things." Albus took a step closer. "Then why are you here?" Elias looked past him toward the distant towers. "Because it isn't finished." Before Albus could reply, footsteps echoed behind him. Rose and Scorpius appeared from the shadows, both pale and wide-eyed. "We followed you," Rose said breathlessly. "We heard." She stopped short, seeing Elias. Scorpius's voice was barely a whisper. "You're supposed to be free." Elias's eyes darkened. "So I thought. But when the vault closed, the castle tried to forget me. It tried to forget everything." Rose frowned. "Forget what?" "The founders," Elias said softly. "Their magic, their wards, everything that holds this place together, it's all fading." The three of them exchanged uneasy glances. "What happens if it forgets completely?" Albus asked. Elias's answer came like a sigh. "Then Hogwarts will unmake itself." The wall behind him shimmered again, the silver light deepening to a soft gold. Within it, faint images stirred, staircases crumbling, towers fading into mist, students running as walls shifted around them. Scorpius's voice was hoarse. "We stopped the castle from remembering too much, and now it's forgetting everything?" Rose pressed a hand to her temple. "There has to be a balance. We need to restore its memory, not all of it, just enough." Elias nodded slowly. "There is a way. The Founders' relics, the true anchors of Hogwarts magic. They were placed in 4 secret chambers, one for each house. If they are restored, the castle will remember itself." Albus frowned. "And if we can't find them?" Elias's form flickered. "Then there will be no Hogwarts left to find." The air pulsed once, then went still. When the light faded, the ghost was gone. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Rose turned to the others, eyes blazing. "We're doing this?" Scorpius groaned. "You mean to say more secret chambers, more deadly curses, and probably another round of near-death experiences?" "Yes," she said firmly. He sighed. "Why did I even ask?" Albus's mouth curved into a faint smile. "The Founders' relics, Gryffindors, Hufflepuffs, Ravenclaws, Slytherins. We'll need all 4. Rose nodded. "If they exist, the castle itself will guide us. We just have to listen." As they turned to leave, a gust of cold wind swept down the corridor. The torches flared, and for an instant, words appeared on the wall in glowing script, as though written by invisible hands. "The castle remembers those who seek its heart." Then the letters faded, leaving only silence. The next morning they met in the courtyard, the dawn painting the towers in gold. None of them spoke of the night before, yet all carried the same fire in their eyes. Rose had already gathered notes, fragments of history maps, half-translated legends of the Founders' artifacts. Scorpius had packed his wand and 3 bars of Honeyduke's chocolate for morale. Albus looked out across the rising sun and the ancient sprawl of the castle. Somewhere in those walls, 4 relics waited, the memory of Hogwarts itself. He drew a deep breath. "Let's find them." And with that, the 3 set off once more into the heart of the castle, where walls whispered names long forgotten, and the echoes of the past stirred in the stones, waiting to remember. The morning sunlight poured through the high windows of the great hall, glinting off the golden plates and sending pale beams across the long tables. Yet to Albus, Rose, and Scorpius, the bright light only seemed to emphasize how much older the castle felt. The air carried a strange weight, and even the enchanted ceiling, normally a cheerful mimic of the sky, shimmered uncertainly, like a reflection on rippling water. Whispers passed through the student body that week, doors sticking shut, corridors twisting into places they shouldn't, portraits forgetting their own names. Nothing dangerous yet, but everything wrong. Hogwarts was forgetting itself. Rose's quill scratched furiously across parchment as she and the others gathered in a hidden nook behind the library fireplace, their new meeting place. The room was small and circular, its walls lined with old maps of the castle. Some of them were so ancient, their ink had faded to ghosts of lines, but faint traces of magic still pulsed within the parchment. "Listen," she said, tapping one corner of a map. "Every founder created a relic, something infused with their essence. Godric Gryffindor's sword is well known, but it's not his relic. It's too visible, too storied. These 4 were never meant for students to find." Scorpius stretched out, balancing precariously on the edge of a chair. "So, hidden magical objects with near limitless power and no instruction manual." "Easy." Rose ignored him, tracing her finger over a section of the castle's layout. "From what I can piece together, they're called hearts. 1 for each founder. The heart of courage, the heart of wisdom, the heart of loyalty, and the heart of ambition. Each one binds a part of the castle's spirit." Albus leaned closer. "And if they fade, the magic that built Hogwarts fades with them," she finished. Silence settled for a moment. A log shifted in the hearth, sending up sparks that flickered like golden fireflies. "So where do we start?" Scorpius asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. Rose turned one of the maps sideways, her brow furrowed. "The first clue lies with Gryffindor. His relic should be the easiest to find. if you're brave enough to follow where it leads." Albus smirked faintly. "I suppose that means me," Scorpius groaned. "And by extension, us. Wonderful." That night, beneath a sky heavy with clouds, they slipped once again through the sleeping castle. Their lanterns threw small pools of light that danced across the stone walls. The halls were unusually quiet. Even the portraits seemed to slumber deeper than usual. Rose led the way, clutching a folded scrap of parchment she had charmed to reveal only to her eyes. It glowed faintly as they approached the entrance to the old dungeons. Far below the great hall, where the walls sweated with damp and the air carried the smell of stone and iron. According to her research, Gryffindor's relic was hidden near a place called the Hall of the First Flame, an ancient chamber built when the founders first raised the castle's foundations. But none of the current professors knew it existed. "Left," Rose whispered, consulting her map. "Then down the spiral." They descended. The stairs grew narrower, the stones slick beneath their feet. At the bottom stood an archway sealed by a heavy iron gate. Its bars were thick with rust, but a faint glow shimmered along their edges, magic still strong after centuries. Albus stepped forward. "Let me try." He drew his wand, breathing slowly. Aperio Ignis. The spell sparked at the tip of his wand, flaring in red and gold. For a heartbeat, the gate blazed like a forge, then melted away, leaving behind only drifting embers that vanished into the air. Scorpius whistled softly. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Beyond the gate stretched a long corridor, lit by flickering sconces. The air was warmer here, almost alive. Flames danced along the walls as though stirred by unseen breath. They followed the corridor until it opened into a vast hall. The ceiling arched high above, supported by massive stone pillars. In the center stood a brazier the size of a cauldron filled with ancient coals that burned with a steady golden fire. "The Hall of the First Flame," Rose breathed. Albus approached the brazier. The heat rolled off it in waves, yet he felt drawn closer, as though something inside called to him. He looked down into the fire and froze. Beneath the flames, nestled among the embers, lay a small, heart-shaped gem of deep red crystal. It pulsed faintly in rhythm with the beat of his own heart. "The heart of courage," Rose whispered. "It's still burning." Albus reached toward it, but as his hand neared the fire, the flames surged, rising into a tall, roaring column. A voice filled the hall, deep, commanding, but not cruel. "Who seeks the fire that built these halls?" The flames twisted, taking shape. A figure stepped forth, tall and broad-shouldered, his mane of hair the color of burning embers. His eyes gleamed with golden light. "Godric Gryffindor," Albus murmured. The spirit of the founder smiled faintly. "Few dare to walk where I once stood. Fewer still come, not for glory, but for duty." Rose bowed her head. "The castle is dying, sir. It's forgetting. We need your relic to restore it." Gryffindor's gaze softened. "Then you understand what it means to stand for more than yourself." His eyes turned to Albus. "Tell me, boy of lion's blood, do you have the courage to carry fire that burns and never fades?" Albus met his gaze without flinching. "If it keeps Hogwarts alive, yes." The spirit's smile deepened. "Then prove it." The fire exploded outward, filling the hall. The brazier vanished, and suddenly Albus stood alone, surrounded by walls of flame. The heat was fierce, but not unbearable. Not yet. A narrow path appeared before him, winding through the inferno. "Your courage is not the absence of fear," Gryffindor's voice echoed. It is the will to move forward, despite it. The path began to crumble under his feet. The fire licked at his robes. Albus forced himself onward, his heartbeat matching the rhythm of the flickering light. He thought of the castle, of Rose's fierce determination, of Scorpius's unwavering loyalty. He thought of Elias, trapped for centuries, and of the laughter that once filled these halls. When he reached the end of the path, a single spark hovered before him, the heart itself. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and closed his hand around it. The fire vanished. He stood once more in the hall. Rose and Scorpius ran toward him, eyes wide. In Albus's palm, the heart of courage glowed softly, pulsing with warm, living light. Gryffindor's spirit watched from afar, his form fading into the flames. 3 more remain. But beware. Each will test what you value most. Then he was gone. The brazier dimmed, leaving behind only the soft glow of the heart in Albus's hand. Rose smiled faintly. 1 down. Scorpius exhaled. 3 to go, and I'm guessing they won't involve cozy fires and kind words. Albus looked toward the long corridor that led back into the castle. Then we'll face them all, together. Behind them, as they left the hall of the first flame, the embers stirred once more, and for a moment a faint voice whispered through the crackle of fire. Hogwarts remembers. The night after they claimed the Heart of Courage, the castle slept fitfully. Doors shuddered in their frames, staircases creaked and shifted, and portraits blinked awake from uneasy dreams. Somewhere deep in the foundations, the fire Albus had carried burned quietly, its warmth spilling through the stone like the pulse of a rekindled heart. But Hogwarts was not yet whole. By the following morning, word had spread of strange new disturbances. Corridors leading in circles, clocks striking hours that did not exist, ink vanishing from freshly written parchment. Professor McGonagall's voice rang sternly through the great hall at breakfast. Until further notice, all students are to remain within their house areas after sundown. Rose exchanged a knowing look with Albus and Scorpius. The order was useless to them now. The castle needed them, and time was slipping away. They met again that evening in the same hidden nook behind the library fireplace. Rose spread her notes across the table, the lamplight glinting off the ink. The next relic should be Ravenclaw's, she said. The heart of wisdom. Scorpius sighed, leaning back in his chair. So, riddles, traps, puzzles, my favorite. Albus smiled faintly. You've always had a knack for logic. Yes, Scorpius said dryly. That's why I've nearly died twice already. Rose tapped her quill impatiently. According to legend, Rowena Ravenclaw built a tower within a tower, a secret place that exists between floors. It's said she hid her greatest treasure there, a stone that holds every answer but speaks only in questions. The heart of wisdom, Albus murmured. Rose nodded. And to reach it, we'll have to solve the castle's own riddle. That night they climbed toward Ravenclaw Tower. The moonlight poured through tall windows, silvering the stairs. The castle was unusually quiet, as though listening. When they reached the bronze eagle door knocker, its wings glimmered faintly in the dark. It spoke before Rose could lift her hand. 3 seek knowledge. 1 carries fire. Tell me, what burns brighter, truth or courage? Albus frowned. Courage, surely. Without it, you'd never seek truth. Rose shook her head. But courage without understanding is blind. Truth burns longer. Scorpius raised a brow. You're both wrong. The answer's light. That's what burns. Now can we... The eagle's eyes flared with blue light. You may enter. Scorpius blinked. Wait, I was right. The door swung open without a sound. Inside, the Ravenclaw common room was empty, filled with moonlight and silence. Books hovered midair, their pages fluttering as if caught in a gentle breeze. The view through the tall windows stretched endlessly, stars and clouds, no ground in sight. Rose moved toward the center of the room, her gaze drawn to the floor. There, etched into the stone, was a circular mosaic depicting a raven in flight. Its eyes were two sapphires that gleamed faintly in the moonlight. Albus crouched beside it. Another lock. As he touched the mosaic, the room shifted. The walls rippled like water. The books vanished, and suddenly they stood in a spiraling staircase of glass and starlight. The air shimmered with a faint hum, and the stairs seemed to rise forever. A voice echoed softly, melodic, calm, and cold. Knowledge is a ladder without end. Climb wisely or fall forever. Rose inhaled sharply. This is her test. They began to climb. At first, the ascent was simple, the stairs solid beneath their feet, the air still. But soon, whispers began to drift through the air. Fragments of words, questions upon questions. What is truth without doubt? What is courage without fear? What is life without loss? Each step seemed to pull at their thoughts, their memories. The glass beneath their feet glowed faintly with scenes from their own pasts. Albus standing in his father's shadow, Rose poring over books, striving always to be perfect. Scorpius alone in a quiet room, hearing his family name, whispered like a curse. The voice spoke again. Wisdom begins when the heart sees what the mind denies. What do you see? Rose stopped. It's showing us ourselves. Scorpius glanced down. I'd rather not, thanks. The staircase trembled, the glass cracking beneath their feet. Albus steadied himself, his hand brushing the air. But the illusion shifted, and suddenly they were standing on a narrow bridge of light stretching across an endless void. At its far end hovered a stone pedestal upon which rested a gem of clear blue crystal. The heart of wisdom. Its glow pulsed softly like a heartbeat heard through water. Albus took a step forward, but the bridge shuddered. A figure appeared before them, tall, elegant, robed in deep blue. Her face was pale and serene, her eyes filled with endless thought. Rowena Ravenclaw regarded them in silence before speaking. You seek the heart of wisdom. Tell me, what will you do with knowledge once you hold it? Rose bowed her head. We'll use it to save Hogwarts, nothing more. Ravenclaw's gaze lingered on her. And when the truth demands sacrifice? Rose hesitated. Then we face it. Ravenclaw smiled faintly, spoken like one who has studied much but learned little. Her eyes turned to Scorpius. And you, son of ambition, what is wisdom to you? He shifted uncomfortably, knowing when not to speak. A spark of amusement flickered in her eyes. Perhaps there's hope for you yet. Finally she faced Albus. And you, heir of the flame, would you trade your courage for understanding? Albus met her gaze. If wisdom can save what I love, yes. Ravenclaw's expression softened. Then take it. She vanished, leaving behind only the pedestal. Albus stepped forward carefully, the bridge trembling beneath him. He reached the gem, its surface cool and smooth, the blue light reflecting in his eyes. As his finger closed around it, the bridge shattered. They fell, spinning through light and darkness, until they landed in the common room once more. The air was calm again, the room restored. In Albus's hand, the heart of wisdom glowed faintly, its light mingling with the red fire of the heart of courage. Rose sat up, rubbing her head. 2 down. Scorpius groaned. And I'm developing a serious dislike for ancient architecture. Albus looked toward the window. The sky outside had begun to pale with dawn. The castle was still. Too still. He felt the hearts pulse together, a faint hum resonating between them. Somewhere deep within Hogwarts, another rhythm answered. Slower, weaker, but alive. The castle's remembering, he murmured. Rose smiled faintly. Then we're running out of time, and we're doing something right. From far away, as the morning light touched the highest towers, a whisper drifted through the corridors, soft like pages turning in a great, unseen book. 2 hearts awoken, 2 yet sleeping. The balance must hold. The sound faded, leaving only the wind and the creak of ancient stone. And high above, in the still air of the tower, a single raven perched upon the windowsill, its eyes gleaming like fragments of the sky, watching the 3 students as though it already knew the path they would take next. The next days passed beneath skies thick with gray cloud. A cold wind swept over the castle, and even the fires in the great hall burned low, as though the very air resisted warmth. The teachers tried to quiet the murmurs of shifting corridors and vanishing staircases, but the walls themselves betrayed them, whispering softly, echoing footsteps from nowhere, humming faintly with an uneasy pulse. Hogwarts was stirring. Albus, Rose, and Scorpius met again at dusk in their secret room behind the library. The fire in the hearth threw restless shadows across the stone walls. 2 relics lay upon the table between them, the red crystal of Gryffindor and the blue gem of Ravenclaw. When placed together, their lights intertwined. Flame and sky, courage and thought, beating like 2 hearts in unison. The next should be Helga Hufflepuff's, Rose said quietly, her eyes on the map she'd drawn. The heart of loyalty. But her magic is hidden deeper than the others. I think it's beneath the greenhouses, maybe even under the lake. Scorpius groaned softly. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be underwater or guarded by angry mermaids? Albus smiled faintly. She was said to love every living thing. If her heart still beats, it'll be somewhere life still thrives. They set out after midnight, the castle silent, save for the slow tolling of the clock tower. They crept past the sleeping suits of armor and out through a narrow side door into the misty night. The moon hung low, pale as milk, and the lawns shimmered faintly with dew. The greenhouses loomed ahead, their glass panes fogged and gleaming. The air inside was thick with damp heat and the perfume of strange blossoms. Plants stirred as they passed, whispering with leaves that brushed their robes. Rose led the way to the farthest greenhouse, where an ancient oak door stood half-hidden beneath creeping ivy. "This one hasn't been opened in years," she murmured. Albus aimed his wand. "Alohomora." The lock clicked softly. The door groaned open. They stepped into darkness. The air smelled of water and moss. Beneath their feet, the floor sloped downward, not soil, but smooth stone covered in vines. At the end of the passage, faint green light flickered, reflecting off still water. They emerged into a cavern. Roots hung like ropes from the ceiling, dripping with moisture. The lake stretched before them. Not the open water above ground, but an underground branch, its surface black as glass. In the center rose a small island of stone covered in wild flowers that glowed faintly in the dark. The heart of loyalty, Rose whispered. It must be there. A soft hum filled the cavern, so gentle it was almost a song. The flowers swayed, though no wind stirred them. Across the lake, something shimmered, a golden glow pulsing from beneath the petals. Scorpius squinted. How do we get there? Swim? Albus scanned the shore. The water's too still, too quiet, it's enchanted. Rose looked thoughtful. Helga's enchantments were never cruel. They were meant to protect, not to harm. Maybe we need to ask. She knelt by the water, her reflection rippling faintly. We seek the heart of loyalty, she said softly, to heal the castle. May we cross? For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water stirred, and a narrow path of stepping stones rose from the depths, each glowing faintly gold. Scorpius blinked. Well, that's unsettlingly polite. They crossed carefully, the water whispering around them. The air grew warmer as they reached the island. The flower's glow brightened, revealing a small golden sphere half buried among the roots of an ancient tree. Albus reached down. The moment his fingers brushed the sphere, the air shimmered, and a gentle laugh echoed through the cavern. A woman's figure appeared beside the tree, her form woven of golden light. Her hair was bound with wild flowers, her eyes kind and bright as candle flames. Helga Hufflepuff, Rose breathed. The founder's voice was soft but strong. So the children of the future come to seek the heart of my house. Tell me, do you know what it means to be loyal? Rose bowed slightly. To stand by others no matter the cost. Helga smiled. And if their cause leads you to ruin? Rose hesitated. Then I would still stand with them. Helga turned her gaze to Scorpius. And you, son of a troubled name, what binds you to these two? He shifted, meeting her eyes. They're my friends, my only real ones. That's enough. A hint of sorrow touched her smile. Few would answer so simply. At last, she faced Albus. And you, child of many legacies, what would you give to protect those you love? Anything, Albus said without hesitation. The light around Helga deepened to gold. Then prove your words. The roots of the great tree stirred, curling around the heart. The flowers dimmed. The cavern trembled, and the water began to rise, flooding over the stepping stones. Albus, Rose cried. He waded forward, the golden sphere gleaming just out of reach. The roots tightened around it, resisting his grasp. The rising water reached his knees, then his waist. Behind him, Scorpius conjured a barrier to slow the flood. Albus pressed both hands against the roots. We're not leaving you behind, he shouted, as though the castle itself could hear. We came together. We leave together. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the roots loosened. The sphere rose gently into his hands, warm as sunlight. Helga's laughter filled the cavern, soft and bright. So you understand, loyalty is not given, it is chosen. The flood halted. The water fell still once more. The golden light enveloped them, and when it faded, the cavern was gone. They stood in the greenhouse again, dawn light streaming through the glass. In Albus's hands, the heart of loyalty gleamed like captured sunlight. Rose exhaled shakily. That's 3. Scorpius leaned against a table, soaked but grinning. I don't know how we're still alive, but I'm beginning to think Hogwarts itself is watching us. Albus looked down at the heart. It is, and it's waiting for the last one. Rose nodded grimly, the heart of ambition. The name alone carried a weight that filled the air with unease. Slytherin's relic, cunning, power, and the will to shape destiny. Scorpius's smile faded. "My family's house," he said softly. Rose placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then maybe you're the one who needs to find it." He met her eyes, and for once, there was no humor in his own. "Maybe I am." Outside, the sun rose over the black lake, turning the water to gold. For the first time in weeks, Hogwarts stood still, as though holding its breath. 3 hearts now beat within the castle's walls, and one, dark, sleeping, and dangerous, waited in the depths below. The wind whispered through the corridors as they left the greenhouse, carrying words none of them spoke aloud. When the last heart wakes, so too will the castle's memory. And somewhere far beneath the school, a door that had not opened in 1,000 years shivered, dust falling from its edges, as if it too were preparing to remember. Storms rolled across the highlands that week, fierce and restless. Thunder boomed over the turrets of Hogwarts, and rain lashed the windows in long silver streaks. It was as though the skies themselves shared the castle's unrest. Beneath the rumble of thunder, the walls hummed faintly, alive with a slow heartbeat, the rhythm of 3 awakened relics. The hearts of courage, wisdom, and loyalty pulsed together now, their glow faint but steady, woven into the threads of the castle's ancient magic. And yet the stones still trembled at night, as though something deep below stirred uneasily in its sleep. The heart of ambition, the last, the most elusive, the most dangerous, awaited. They gathered once more in their secret chamber, the fire crackling low. Scorpius sat nearest the flame, his expression unusually quiet. The others watched him, uncertain how to begin. Finally, Rose spoke. "Slytherin's relic is said to be hidden beneath the castle, deeper than even the Chamber of Secrets. Salazar called it the Veiled Sanctum. The founders sealed it away when they built the school." Albus leaned forward, frowning. "And you think we can reach it?" Rose nodded, spreading a parchment before them. The maps from the library all show an incomplete foundation, like something's missing under the dungeons. "There's a stairway marked here." She pointed to a corner near the old potion cellars. "It ends abruptly. If there's any path left, that's where it begins." Scorpius had been silent, staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Salazar's hard. It won't be like the others. His magic doesn't test courage or kindness. It tempts." Rose met his gaze. "You think it'll try to use you?" "I know it will." Outside, thunder cracked. The windows rattled in their frames. Albus reached across the table, resting his hand on Scorpius's shoulder. "Then we'll be there to pull you back." Scorpius managed a small smile. "That's what I'm afraid of." They left at midnight. The storm had not abated. Lightning forked across the sky, bathing the towers in white light. The castle was asleep but uneasy. Portraits stirred in their frames as they passed, eyes glimmering faintly with awareness. The dungeons smelled of damp stone and potion fumes. Their footsteps echoed softly as they descended past the classrooms and into older, unused halls. The torches here were dim and flickering, their flames tinted green. "Here," Rose whispered, stopping before a cracked archway half hidden by a tapestry. She drew it aside, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. Albus lit his wand. Lumos. The light caught on walls, slick with moisture. The air grew colder as they descended, the sound of dripping water echoing off unseen stone. The stairs ended in a small landing before a vast iron door engraved with a serpent coiled around a heart-shaped sigil. "The mark of Slytherin," Rose murmured. "The final heart." Scorpius stepped closer. The serpent's eyes gleamed faintly emerald. He hesitated, then placed his palm against the door. The stone trembled. The serpent's eyes flared to life, and a voice hissed softly, not aloud, but in his mind. "Err not of blood, but of will. Speak your desire." Scorpius's breath caught. "We want to save Hogwarts," the voice whispered low and knowing. "Do you? Or do you seek to change it, to make it yours?" He clenched his jaw. "No." The serpent hissed softly, almost amused. "All who touch my heart say the same." The door swung open without a sound. A vast chamber stretched before them, lit by columns of green fire that rose from the floor. The air shimmered faintly, heavy with ancient enchantments. In the center stood a pedestal of black stone upon which rested a heart-shaped gem of deep shadowed glass. It pulsed slowly, each throb sending ripples through the air like the beat of something alive. The heart of ambition. Albus and Rose hung back as Scorpius approached. The chamber's light seemed to bend around him, reflections sliding across the wet stone like serpents. A faint whisper filled the air. "Scorpius Malfoy." He froze. The voice was his own. It echoed from the walls, soft and silken, curling around him like smoke. Why follow when you could lead? Why hide behind a name that was once feared and revered? He shook his head. "That's not me." "Isn't it?" the voice purred. "You could restore your family's honor, rewrite what they were, take what you deserve." The gem pulsed brighter, its glow creeping across the floor like liquid darkness. Rose called out, "Scorpius, don't listen." But he couldn't look away. Visions flickered in the gem's surface. His father bowed by the weight of shame. His family crest tarnished, himself standing above it all, triumphant, redeemed. For a heartbeat, the temptation burned, hotter than any fire. Then another voice cut through, quieter, steadier, Albus's. "You don't have to prove anything. You already did." The illusions faltered. Scorpius tore his gaze from the gem. "No," he said hoarsely. "I won't be what it wants." He reached out, hands trembling, and touched the heart. A shock of cold light burst through the chamber. The floor cracked, the air filling with wind. From the darkness, a tall figure emerged, cloaked, regal, his eyes bright as emerald flame. Salazar Slytherin regarded them silently. "Few dared awake my legacy," he said. His voice was calm, proud, edged like a blade. "Tell me why I should entrust my heart to you." Scorpius met his gaze without flinching. "Because ambition without purpose destroys. You built this school to preserve power, but we're trying to save it." A flicker of amusement passed through the founder's eyes. "A Malfoy who speaks of salvation. The world does change." He raised a hand. "Then take it, but understand power never passes freely. To carry my heart is to know the hunger that forged it." The heart flared once more, and Scorpius felt its weight settle within him. A whisper in his veins, not cruel, but potent, vast as the sea. He staggered, but Albus and Rose caught him before he fell. Slytherin watched them, expression unreadable. "All four hearts are one," he said. "When united, they will awaken what sleeps beneath this castle, the memory of Hogwarts itself. But beware, what wakes may not wish to sleep again." Then he was gone, the chamber falling silent. The fires dimmed, and the heart of ambition glowed softly in Scorpius's hand, dark, gleaming, and strangely alive. They left the sanctum in silence, the storm raging louder above. When they reached the courtyard, dawn was breaking. The rain had stopped. The castle loomed against the pale sky, still and waiting. Albus placed his hand on the cold stone of the nearest wall. The hearts hummed together, their magic weaving through the walls like veins of light. Rose looked toward the towers. "It's time," she said quietly. Scorpius nodded. "All four. We bring them to the heart of Hogwarts." Thunder rolled one final time, echoing through the hills like a promise. And somewhere, deep within the castle, a door they had never seen before began to glow. A door that led to the center of Hogwarts' soul, where its first magic was born, and where its final secret waited to be remembered. Dawn bled into gold over the highlands, and the storm's last whispers faded beyond the mountains. The towers of Hogwarts shone in that early light, but the castle itself seemed tense, as though it waited, listening for footsteps that had not yet reached its deepest heart. Albus, Rose, and Scorpius gathered in the courtyard beneath the shadow of the clock tower. The four hearts lay before them upon a cloak spread across the stone, red for courage, blue for wisdom, gold for loyalty, and black glass for ambition. Their light mingled, pulsing softly, in rhythm with the steady heartbeat that now echoed faintly through the walls of the ancient school. Rose spoke first. "The Founder's relics are awake, but they're not meant to be separate. We have to bring them together, where Hogwarts began." Scorpius glanced toward the great oak doors that led inside. "And where would that be? I don't recall a sign saying original birthplace of magical catastrophes." Rose smiled faintly despite herself. "Not a sign. A place that exists between the Founder's chamber, where their magics were bound together for the first time, the castle's true heart." Albus stood, feeling the weight of the relics hum in the air. "Then that's where we go." They re-entered the castle as the sun climbed higher. The portraits turned to watch them pass, their painted eyes wary, curious, or quietly approving. A few whispered blessings under their breath. "Founders guide you," muttered the fat friar who drifted solemnly through a wall as they passed. They moved through halls that no longer obeyed the logic of stone. Doors opened onto staircases that wound upward only to descend again, and corridors doubled back on themselves. The castle was shifting, alive, pulling them toward its hidden center. By the time they reached the great hall, the magic had thickened like mist. The enchanted ceiling above no longer mirrored the sky, but rippled with shadow and flame. The tables were gone. In their place, the flagstones of the floor glowed with faint runes forming a spiral pattern. Rose drew a sharp breath. Here, this is where they bound their power. As she stepped forward, the spiral brightened. The four houses' crests appeared in the circle's outer rings, their emblems blazing to life. The relics trembled on the cloak as though eager to rise. "Ready?" Albus asked. Scorpius swallowed. "No, but go on anyway." One by one they placed the relics upon the runes, red, blue, gold, black, aligning them with the sigils of Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin. The moment the last gem touched the stone, the floor shuddered. A column of light erupted from the center of the hall, reaching to the ceiling. The air vibrated with voices, ancient, layered, overlapping, like the chords of a spell half sung. The crests flared brighter until their colors merged into white. From within the light, figures began to take shape. The Founders. Godric stood first, tall and fierce-eyed, his sword sheathed at his side. Helga glowed beside him, her smile warm and sorrowful. Rowena shimmered like starlight, her robes trailing wisps of silver thought. And Salazar lingered at the edge of shadow, his gaze sharp and unreadable. Rose fell to one knee instinctively. "Founders of Hogwarts, we beg your guidance." Godric's voice filled the hall. "Few call us back who do not understand the price." Helga looked toward the relics, her light flickering. The castle remembers itself at last. But memory is not peace. Rowena's voice was soft, yet it carried power. To awaken its heart is to release all it has forgotten, every joy, every grief, every spell ever cast within its walls. "And every shadow," Salazar murmured. His eyes gleamed green beneath the white light. "You think you've restored balance, but you've only turned the key?" Scorpius stepped forward. "If that's true, tell us what to do. How do we keep Hogwarts from falling apart?" Godric's hand rested on his sword hilt, though his expression was kind. "There is only one path. The castle's memory must be sealed within a living keeper, one who bears all four virtues in equal measure." Rose's heart sank. "A living keeper?" Helga nodded. "To remember and forget in the same breath, to hold its magic and bind its storms." Rowena's gaze passed over the three of them. "But such a soul cannot remain untouched. They would belong to the castle, not the world." Scorpius's face had gone pale. "You mean whoever does it will never leave?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Albus's hand tightened at his side. "There has to be another way." Salazar stepped forward, his expression cold but almost sorrowful. "There never was. We built Hogwarts with our strengths and our flaws. Someone must bear them both." The light pulsed, the air trembled. The castle groaned around them, and cracks split the walls as the ancient magic stirred, hungry and wild. The great hall seemed to breathe, expanding, contracting, as though the very stones could no longer contain their power. Helga's voice broke through the chaos. "Choose before the castle chooses for you." Rose looked between the two boys, her eyes wide with fear. "No, we started this together. There must be a way for all of us." "Rose," Albus said quietly, "you've done enough. You've given it your mind, your courage, but this..." He looked down at the glowing runes. "It called to me first. I'll do it." Scorpius's protest was sharp. "Like hell you will?"
You think you get to play the noble hero and leave us behind? Not this time, but Rose saw something in Albus's face. Not pride, not recklessness, but calm resolve. She knew that look. She'd seen it the night he'd stepped into Gryffindor's fire. He smiled faintly. "Someone has to remember what we fought for." "I can do that." The founders watched silently. Then Godric inclined his head. "So be it." Light flared around Albus, fierce and blinding. The hearts rose from the floor, circling him, red, blue, gold, and black, weaving together until they merged into a single orb of white fire. The voices of the castle swelled, echoing through every corridor. Rose reached out, tears in her eyes. "Albus!" He turned once, his voice steady. "Take care of each other." Then the light consumed him. The storm within Hogwarts broke with a sound like thunder. The runes shattered, the glow faded, and when the brilliance died away, Albus stood alone at the center of the hall, the relics gone. But he was different. His eyes shimmered faintly, and light pulsed beneath his skin like threads of living magic. The hall around them grew calm, the cracks mending, the air clearing. The ceiling above once again mirrored the true dawn sky, The founder's spirit smiles, proud, mournful. Godric's voice rang like a final benediction. The keeper of Hogwarts is chosen. The castle lives. Their forms faded, dissolving into the golden light. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then Albus looked up, his voice quiet, distant. It remembers. Rose stepped forward, trembling. Albus? He smiled, and in that smile she saw both him and something greater, the consciousness of the school itself. I'm still me, but I can hear it all. Every whisper, every laughter, every spell cast since it was built. Scorpius swallowed hard. You're part of it now. Someone had to be, Albus said softly. The doors of the great hall opened on their own, sunlight spilling through. Beyond them the castle stood serene once more, whole, humming faintly with life renewed. Rose and Scorpius walked beside him silent, the echoes of magic fading behind them. Outside the lake gleamed under the morning sun, calm and bright. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. Albus turned to them, his voice a whisper. It's over. Hogwarts is safe. Rose nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. Because of you. He shook his head. Because of us. As they stepped into the light, the wind swept through the courtyard, carrying a faint echo through the castle's endless halls. Not a ghost's lament this time, but a quiet, contented sigh. The castle remembered, and for the first time in centuries it dreamed in peace. And somewhere in that ancient dream, deep within walls, older than memory, a whisper lingered, gentle, eternal.